iCue is the brain of the board. It's that built-in customized Android experience so that you can leverage the panel without a computer attached. So to switch to iCue, I tapped on my home button from my control panel on the bottom right of the screen, or of the display. The iCue experience, I have on the agenda that we were going to talk about signing in to personalize it. So I'll show you that briefly, but I don't know how much you're going to use that here in the university setting. I think you'll probably use it more regularly in those actual K-12 environments when you go out to student teach or support teachers in classrooms, or once you're out there as a teacher yourself. But so you're aware, teachers can log into the iCue with Google credentials or Microsoft credentials, and that will allow you to sync up and access directly from the display your Google files or your Microsoft files through Google Drive or OneDrive. It also gives teachers access to that online environment that I mentioned earlier called Lumio. So teachers can build in Notebook from scratch if they want, or they can build using some templates inside Lumio. And then those lessons that are, if they wanted to upload Notebook lessons into Lumio, they could do that. Once their lessons are in Lumio, they can pull those lessons up directly on the display. And I'll give you a little teaser of what that looks like towards the end. But those are some of the benefits of signing in, is really getting to your own files, but then also customizing. So right now we have this goofy geometric tree, so we can choose to sign in with Google or Microsoft. And you do not have to have a paid license subscription to anything from Smart in order to do this. We're leaning on that single sign-on from Google or Microsoft. I'm just, for the sake of convenience, I'm gonna use my Google. One thing to note is that this is not a traveling profile. By that I mean, in some school districts, the desktop computers or the laptops distributed, I'll touch on that in just a minute. If you sign in with those school districts' credentials, you see all of your stuff, including your backgrounds and favorites and things. And then if you sign out and go to another district-issued computer, you get everything you saw on that computer by signing in with your same credentials. The profile doesn't travel between boards, but it will save to this board any preferences you establish. So what this is asking me right now, it's the very first time I've signed into this display. So as again, profile settings are saved locally. It's asking me if I want to sync my files automatically from Lumio, because it recognizes the email address I happen to use has been used to build some Lumio lessons. So it's giving me that ability, and of course I want to say yes. Now let's do some personalization to the board to get it started. You can use a thumb drive, plug it in, and pull up any image you want as a wallpaper. I'm just going to choose a different wallpaper from the options that Smart has given us. These two monsters are my son's favorite Smart monsters. The other thing I want to do is go to my files library and allow my Google Drive integration. If I wanted to, I could also turn on my OneDrive integration. Now, I haven't signed in with Microsoft credentials, so I'd have to sign in again there, but go to my Google Drive integration since I've signed in with Google today. And there are some other things. I wouldn't recommend getting lost in all of this. I think those are kind of your key favorites or settings that you want to personalize. To get back out to that iCue home screen, we're just going to tap our home button on the front of the display. And now you can see Dimitri and Lavalon. Hopefully my Zoomies can see them a little more clearly than that bright blue background we had, or whatever color.
And Heather, you access that by tapping the settings.
Yes, I'm sorry. I didn't clear that. I didn't spell that out. You're right. Yes. So we tapped on settings in the bottom left corner of the screen. We tapped on wallpaper. I chose from the options, but certainly you can add pictures from a USB thumb drive if you plug it into the front here. And then I went to Files Library to turn on my file integration. So then I'll press the Home button, the little button with the house on it, to get back. And I won't, for the sake of time, I won't sign out and sign back in. But as I said, if I signed out, walked away, 10 minutes later, an hour later, 3 days later, I came back, signed in, we would not see Dimitri and Lavalade after I signed out. We would see them once I signed back in. Same goes for the file library. So the real, I think, easy to use and shining star of the interactive whiteboards for any grade level, including higher ed, is our interactive whiteboard. I'm going to tap on that. I'm actually going to change it to chalkboard mode. I think this screen will show better if I put the background as a dark chalky gray, chalkboard gray. So once our whiteboard loads up, I'll have some background options. I'll talk through those and then I'll select the chalkboard. And it's just, there it goes. Okay. So when you first open the interactive whiteboard, you'll see there's a black box at the bottom with some background options. I will point out on the whiteboard, if I pick up my pen, just as when we were connected with a computer, I didn't have to go pick a tool, right? I picked up the pen and I started writing. I use my finger to move this writing, and I use my palm to erase that writing by default. Now, of course, I've gone back to the white because I wanted you to see the black pen without changing my tool, because object awareness allows me to just do those all automatically. Let's go to change back. If you wrote on the paper, the background options disappear. So you can change the background by tapping on it looks like a stack of cards, sort of your PowerPoint deck in the bottom left corner. So you can add multiple pages, and this will let you see the page organizer. And then I'm going to tap the 3 little dots and change my background back to chalkboard. Now I'm going to pick a different color that's going to actually show up on the blackboard. So I'll choose white. We'll go old school with chalk. So there's our writing. So we can change the color to anything we want. We even have some highlighter tools. I don't know that the highlighter looks good on the black ink or on the black background. You probably can't see it at all on the Zoom. Oh, a little bit. So there's a variety of tools here, even the same text, writing to text tool that we had in Smart Ink, very similar. So I'm gonna write chalk again. Oops, I forgot it's gonna get confused because I don't know how to spell. Oh, it did it. Oh, good. Okay, it figured it out. So now this is actually text on my page that I can click and drag. It's an object that I can move around the screen, tap and drag. So there are some other tools available to us, like we can bring in images from the web. This is a Bing Safe Search. So it's going to avoid inappropriate content for our students. Oh, let's go look up the sun again. Can stick with the solar system today, for the most part. So we've got images. We can even get videos from YouTube about the sun and pull those directly into our whiteboard. So this is a nice little 5-minute video. So we have our nice big picture of the sun. We can manipulate that. We can rotate it, using gestures. We have some widgets. So a protractor, a ruler. What's kind of fun about the ruler and the protractor is they actually help you draw straight lines or draw the angle. So those are nice. There's spinner, which our K-12 teachers, our K-5 in particular, love the spinner and the dice, and even a timer and a clock. One other thing to note is that I can move around the screen a little bit. This view that we have right now is actually part of a 3x3 grid. So if I use one finger to move the screen a bit, you see a white grid line has shown up. And at the bottom center of the screen, there's a miniature of the larger canvas. So what you see when you first open the whiteboard is just a portion of the larger digital canvas you have to work with. Now, my favorite way to use this extra space, if my teachers are thinking about doing station rotation, if they do small group work, I recommend, you could have each group do a problem or brainstorm an idea in each corner. So group 1 is going to solve their problem, then we station rotate and we put, oh, I zoomed out by mistake. Zoom back in. We can use gestures to zoom in. Group 2 is going to be over here. 2. You get the idea, put a group in each corner, put a group in each square, however that makes sense. And then we could even zoom out and see everybody's work. The other really exciting thing about this whiteboard is our ability to send it out to student devices and even add pages that have templates on them. So graphic organizers or manipulatives. So let's go ahead and anybody who's on Zoom, anybody who's in the room and wants to play along, just as students in a K-12 classroom and your students today, you can send them to hellosmart.com and they can type in the code for the display and join the whiteboard session from their own device. So our code is, this is actually my teacher code, 887119. And anytime you sign in, you're gonna have your own unique code. It doesn't change, but it's unique to you. So if I were to sign out, joining room 204 would have a different code shown under it. But I could have students join even if I hadn't signed into the IQ experience. This is very, very popular with, or it was very popular with students as they were hybrid teaching, teachers and students hybrid teaching this past year. And of course, leveraging one-to-one devices in the classroom was something that we knew even before the pandemic was a necessity, because while there are instances where it's great to use the display, teachers have one-to-one devices, they want to use that as well. They want to be able to use both. And so now you have that kind of flexibility. So we've got a couple of guests in our lesson, and I'll start sharing the lesson so you can see my whiteboard get sent to the student device through that browser. And now I'm going to add a page where we might brainstorm. Let's brainstorm. Oops, I'm still in yellow highlighter. Let me go ahead and change that back to, let's do just black. We want to brainstorm use. And I'm going to go ahead and convert this now to something that all of my students can collaborate with me on. So I'll step through those more slowly. I'm just going to show you what it ends up looking like. I'll walk you through this one more time. I'm just going to do it quickly so we can get everybody in and engaged. But essentially what I'm doing is I've sent the whiteboarding session to my student devices. Now I'm making that whiteboarding session something they can interact with from their own devices. I'll put everyone on one team. And as soon as it's done processing, Sunny and Dave will be able to contribute to this whiteboard with me from their own devices. So you should have some tools on the side. They might be hiding under an ellipses if you're on a teeny, like Sunny has joined from a smaller device, so hers might be on an ellipses, but I can see that Sunny,
with my scratch,
is writing with her finger up here.
Oh, I love this.
And I can go ahead and add ink as well. I think we've got a hey y'all added here. So everybody can contribute to this brainstorming session, and that allows us to have a more engaged, a more deep conversation or a learning experience, even though we can't maybe all physically huddle up at the board. You can also set this up as small groups. So I'll walk through this more slowly now. I'm going to add a page to my whiteboard, my sort of on-the-fly lesson, if you will, by clicking on the plus button just above my navigation tools in the bottom left corner of the whiteboard. So I'll click the plus button. I can choose any one of our graphic organizers, which are phenomenal for any age group. We also have manipulatives. These do lean K-5 or special education up to grades 9 or 10. But the manipulatives are really nice because they actually have infinitely cloned objects, and some of them have like a dice that spins built in so that you or your students can engage with those digital manipulatives on the screen. So for this example, since we've already done a graphic organizer, I'll go ahead and put up a fractions tile template. So you should, my students who have joined should see the fractions tile template on their browser. And perhaps I'm going to say practice. Now I've written on it, I've talked about what I want my students to do. I'm gonna click on the little people icon, which is where I click there and pop this out to have my students join. So people icon, little caret to blow up the instructions for joining. And then once my students have joined, if I tap that little caret again to bring it back, I should see two options on the bottom, individual handout or collaborative workspace. I'll go ahead and do collaborative workspace one more time, and we can talk about how individual handouts look a little different. If we have time, we can show that. Okay, a few more things to do. So I choose collaborative workspace, and then I choose setup, and it's gonna give me the option to either make small groups or put everyone on one team. And I haven't set up my teams yet, so there we go. I have 3 students, and now you can see that I have the ability to make up to 3 groups because I have 3 students in. In total, this is particularly relevant to point out for higher ed faculty, our maximum number of groups and the size of those groups is 9 groups of 6 students. So 54 students can join at the same time for these collaborative workspaces if you're gonna do small group. If you do everyone on one team, you could have a couple hundred in there and it will work, although it'll get very busy. Let's go ahead and do 2 groups this time then. You saw that with everyone on one group, everybody had access to the same page, and as the teacher, I also had access to give you that feedback. It's gonna randomly assign us into groups. And if I needed to swap students around, because I know that Sunny has worked with Dave before, and we'll pretend that this is the other Sunny, right? I can move the names around if I want to, but then I'll start the workspace. So we added a page, we chose a digital manipulative for that page. We wrote something on the page, maybe some instructions, we gave some pointers to our students. Then we went to our people icon and we chose to convert it to a collaborative workspace. We chose the number of teams we wanted. And now my students have the ability to participate in small groups from their individual devices.
All from the board without using your computer at all.
Correct. Okay, so team 2, on my phone here, I'm on team 2. I'm gonna go ahead and tap on team 2 so I can show you that as I move something up, it shows that someone has moved that tile. So as the teacher, I can peek in on what you're up to. Maybe I just do a little doodle up there. And who's on team 2 with me? Dave? No, Sunny? Sunny's on my team.
On both teams.
Sunny's on both teams.
I'm way ahead of you here. Watch out.
Does Sunny see my work on team 2?
My work isn't showing up there. Oh wait, I'm on team, this is showing.
Are you in team 1? Okay, let's go back to team 1. That's okay. Let's tap our arrow in the top left takes us back, and we can tap on team 1's workspace to take a peek at what Sunny and Dave are doing here. Ooh, I see they've started moving some fraction tiles around. Okay, so we can peek in on the groups. I call this the digital over the shoulder peek, especially when we were hybrid and virtual learning this past year. Lots of teachers were frustrated that they couldn't just go around and help their students in person, peek over their shoulder. Someone is writing help us, which means team 1 needs help, which is great to know. Now I can address that. Now, as in real practical applications, you may, as a teacher, not want to share the students' work until you've checked with them, until they've, given you the thumbs up or everything feels good to look at. But this is, it's a fun way you can do social emotional checks with group work. You can, of course, do actual lesson content with group work. And it just, again, makes that lesson more engaging and more interesting for the students. So they really will have that deeper learning experience. When we're done with our whiteboard, we can certainly go back to our home screen. Maybe there are some other things we need to accomplish. The display gives you a built-in browser. I want to be totally transparent with you that this is a Chromium browser, so it's not a full-blown Chrome or Microsoft Edge or Firefox browser on the display. It is Chromium, so if you go to a website with Flash, it's not going to play Flash. So there are some other little things about it that are quirky that maybe you expect your full-blown browser to do that it will not do here. But if you just need to quickly pull up a website during your lesson, you can certainly do that. So we'll just tap on that browser. We'll search it's Chromium for, we'll stick with the sun. And maybe there's we'll go to NASA's website and we'll talk about the sun. Get to a website quick and easy from the IQ experience. Not a whole lot to do here, but it gives you easy access if you don't want to take the time to plug in your computer and switch inputs. You've already started on the whiteboard. You can pull up something from the browser here. Back to our home button. We tap our little home button on the front control panel. Something to notice, this column on the right in the center of my screen is my favorites column. So by default, the whiteboard and the browser are favorites. I can go to the apps, which I'll go to in a minute, and create more favorites. Anything that I've looked at recently, like that whiteboard we were just building out, or the website that I've gone to, they're going to show up in this left side column. So for those who are on Zoom and can't see the words, it's favorites on the right and recent on the left. And this will give you, I think it gives you up to 2 columns for each. So I'll go ahead and favorite another app so you can see what that looks like. Again, this is locally saving that personalization to your display. If I go to apps, I have some basic apps readily available, like a calculator app, and I'm gonna favorite that calculator by tapping on the little star in the upper left corner of the app. That fills in the star with green. And now if I go back to my home screen, that calculator app shows up under my favorites. And for those on Zoom, let me point out the bubbles a little more specifically. We saw our settings gear symbol icon in that bottom left. Our files, which I will get to in a few minutes, is the first one on the left of the center 4 bubbles. I was just in apps. The files icon looks like a piece of paper with a corner folded over. The apps icon looks like a waffle. The next one is your input. So if you are in IQ, you can tap the input. And now I've unplugged, haven't I? Mm-hmm. So we're not going to get a preview because I've unplugged. It's going to search and search and search because it knows the cable is there. We'll go back to home. So the input icon looks just like the input button. Let's talk about, did I have screen share next? Yes, I did. Okay. So screen sharing is if we want students' devices to share up to the display without physically connecting them to the display. And there are a couple of ways to do this. So it's giving me the tutorial because I've never logged into this board before, but I'll walk you through the tutorial. It says connect your device to the same network. This is a key, and maybe I should have checked with you, Sunny, in advance. I'm sorry, I forgot to do that.
I believe they are
on the same network?
Yeah.
Okay. So as long as your other devices that you're screen sharing up to the display and the display itself are on the same network, Wi-Fi network, or if the board happens to be hardwired and that hardwiring allows for the wireless connection, which is just a simple network adjustment, Sunny, if we need to make that. Then student devices can share up. We do have native screen sharing options available. So if you're from a PC, you could Miracast. From a Chromebook, you could Chromecast. You could also Chromecast from a laptop if you have Chrome browser on your laptop. There's AirPlay for the iOS devices. Or there's the Screen Share app. So we wanted to give districts both options because we know some districts have particular policies about wireless versus native screen sharing protocols. They might have certain blocks on native screen sharing protocols. So we give teachers the option or districts the option to use either the, and I'm gonna skip that part, either the app-based screen sharing, which requires that you go to this QR code to get our app, or you can use native screen sharing. You can share up to 4 devices at the same time and show all 4 at the same time and even, compare and contrast what your students have found in their research, or we can expand one of them. This provides a nice opportunity essentially for students to share their work, or again, if a teacher wanted to just quickly display something from another device like a Chromebook or an iPad, they could do that very simply. The last thing I'll touch on is files. So the bubble that's to the far left, it looks like a piece of paper. It'll pull up files. Now by default, it's going to pull up my Lumio files. But notice from this drop-down menu, I also have my Google Drive available to me because I turned on Google Drive at the very beginning under the settings. So I have access to any Lumio lesson I may have built, and that whiteboard lesson actually gets saved to the Lumio as well automatically. So I can even get to that whiteboarding session outside of class and make it available to my students through their learning management system. Go ahead and pull up. We talked about doing a mini lesson kind of demo of Lumio, but I want to make sure, I think we'll still have time. We'll open my Google Drive. But yeah, so let's go back to our home. The first time you probably will need to sign in again. Now if I go to Files, so I'm going to tap the Files button. I'm going to choose from my drop-down menu the Google Drive, and it's going to open up the Google Drive for me. So I can get to all of my Google Drive files. I can open a PDF. I could open up a Lumio lesson, a slides lesson if I wanted to, all here on the display without connecting a computer. And with that, I will, it's just being a little slow to load that whole slides presentation. Again, with OneDrive, it would be your OneDrive files, like your Word files, your PowerPoint files, even your PDFs, whatever you have in there, it's all going to be available through that integration.